Relinquished is the ace card of Pegasus, representing his inner darkness as compared to the Toons who represent his outer jovialness. The Eyes Restrict archetype, as it is called, received a wave of support a few years back, but now it's time to finish the job and make this a fully functioning deck that doesn't suck so much. Or maybe sucks more? Relinquished and Thousand Eyes Restrict, more so the latter, had their limelight in the early days, with the Restrict serving as a go-to instant fusion target that made it so menacing it was outright banned for years. But even the newer support hasn't allowed it to reclaim any sort of meta status. The Eyes Restrict archetype focuses on facilitating the summoning of Relinquished and its two fusions in order to absorb opponents' monsters. By doing so, the stats of the absorbed monster can work against the opponent in various ways. In theory, this strategy has a lot of promise that could easily reach its glory days of GOAT format, so here's how the custom support looks. The dark side of Pegasus' deck has two more monsters that he used that haven't been retrained just yet, and that starts off with Millennium Piper, who has the in-hand effect that is a quick effect during the main phase. You can discard him to ritual summon one Relinquished from your hand by tributing a monster from your hand or field whose level is 1 or more, then equip one monster your opponent controls to it that gives it 1000 attack and defense. So this is a way to disrupt your opponent immediately on the first turn of the duel, and is a non-targeting way to absorb your opponent's monsters. Also has another effect on the field during your main phase. You can special summon as many monsters as possible that are equipped to Relinquished and Eyes Restrict monsters you control. You can only use each effect of Millennium Piper once per turn. The other retrain is Millennium-Eye Bakudan, who cannot be targeted for an attack while you control other monsters. On normal summon, it allows you to add one Relinquished or a card that mentions it from your deck to your hand, and if you do, destroy this card during your opponent's next end phase, then destroy one card your opponent controls. Final note, both these guys are Pyro, so that makes this deck a fine candidate for Bonfire, if you can afford it. Fortunately, we play these customs on Dueling Book where nobody has any money and we're still happy. Right? The final monster is an additional fusion, Necro Eyes Restrict, whose materials are Relinquished and one monster in your graveyard, which works perfectly with Relinquished fusion. Once per turn, you can target one monster in your opponent's grave and equip it to this card. This card gains attack and defense equal to that equipped monsters, and monsters with the type of a monster equipped to this card cannot activate their effects in the grave. So a great floodgate against your opponent if they rely on those graveyard effects and run a single type of monster. Moreover, once per turn, as a quick effect, you can send one monster equipped to this card to the grave, destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same attribute as the sent monster. The spells start off with a retrain of Black Illusion Ritual, and that is Black Illusion Rites. This allows you to ritual summon a Relinquished from your hand or banishment. You must also tribute a monster from your hand or field whose level is 1 or more. For the rest of the turn after this card resolves, it negates the effects of face-up monsters your opponent currently controls. So this allows you to shut off any sort of negating or targeting prevention, then allows you your Relinquish to be able to absorb those monsters. Moreover, during your main phase, except the turn this card was sent to the grave, you can banish it from the grave to target one Relinquished or one monster that mentions it that is in your banishment and add it to your hand. The next spell is the field spell Black Illusion Vortex. So this is going to get around one of the main weaknesses of the deck, that the Relinquished monsters rely on the attack and defense of your opponent's monsters, because every level 1 spellcaster on the field gains 1000 attack for every Relinquished and Eyes Restrict fusion monster on the field. So if you are able to get out 5 somehow, you don't have to absorb any of your opponent's monsters and you would have 5,000 attack monsters on the field. Otherwise, your opponent cannot target Relinquished and Eyes Restrict fusion monsters with card effects, and once per turn, when a monster is equipped to Relinquished or an Eyes Restrict fusion monster by its effect, target one card on the field and destroy it. Starting off the traps is Black Illusion Capture Jar. So this has a few effects, first of which, when it's activated, you can target a monster your opponent controls and equip it to a Relinquished or an Eyes Restrict fusion monster you control. Second, monsters with the same type as a monster equipped to Relinquish and Eyes Restrict fusion monsters you control are changed to defense position and also can't change their battle position. And then finally, you can send this card to the grave to special summon one Millennium Piper from your hand or deck to be able to take advantage of its second effect, where it can special summon any of the monsters that are equipped to your Relinquish and Eyes Restrict fusion monsters. You can only activate one effect of Black Illusion Capture Jar per turn, and only once that turn. And finally, we have the counter trap Black Illusion Magic. When your opponent activates a spell, trap card, or effect, you can banish one monster card equipped to Relinquished or an Eyes Restrict Fusion monster you control, negate the activation, and if you do, destroy it. It also has a graveyard effect where you can banish it to protect your Relinquished and Eyes Restrict Fusion monsters from being destroyed by battle or card effects for the rest of that turn. So these two effects kind of work hand in hand, because when you de-equip your Relinquished or Eyes Restrict Fusion monsters, you're leaving them in a vulnerable state, but Black Illusion Magic has that graveyard effect that allows you to protect them until the next turn where you can absorb more monsters. So that does it for the Relinquished support. Hope you enjoy it, and make sure to like and subscribe, because next week will be a special showcase based on a major theme of the original series, the Heart of the Cards archetype.